diagnosed.
And she would never take any care when she got TB the first time. She went off down to Notley. She was told she'd got to rest, stay in bed, or even go to a home for a bit. She said, no, I won't. I'm going to plant daffodils, and did all the time.
Vivien hoped to play Ophelia in Olivier's film of Hamlet. But Olivier felt a younger woman would be more appropriate for the part. Instead, Vivien starred in a movie version of Tolstoy's Anna Karenina with Ralph Richardson.
What are you going to do with those letters?
I shall divorce you and obtain the custody of Sergei.
You cannot take Sergei from me.
With these letters, I can.
You cannot take him from me. You don't love him as I do. He's mine. I couldn't bear it.
And me? Has anyone ever asked if I can bear it?
I never wished to hurt you. Some things are stronger than we are. I cannot help myself. All these people, all going somewhere. Why do they trouble? Can't escape from yourself. Why not turn out the lights when there's nothing more to be seen?
Anna Karenina was called a beautiful failure. Hamlet was one of the triumphs of Olivier's career. In 1947, while he was producing, directing, and starring in it, Olivier was knighted by King George VI. At 40, he was British theatre's youngest ever knight. From now on, they were Sir Lawrence and Lady Olivier.
One is often reminded about the image which they projected to the public at large of being this great romantic couple.
Lawrence and Lady Olivier, after their successful tour of Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, the most glamorous couple in England, anywhere, I would think. The great romantic marriage of these two beautiful people who were both, in their way, magnificent artists.
Famous personalities of the entertainment world included Sir Laurence Olivier and his wife, Vivien.Leigh, seen here talking to Italian stars.
The Oliviers. It was almost like being royal to be those two.
They really were the kind of king and queen of the theatre.
Through the years, they appeared together in a number of plays, among which were The School for Scandal, Antony and Cleopatra, and Macbeth.
She always had, of course, to struggle with his huge shadow, and he was a very great Macbeth, perhaps the greatest one we'll ever see. She used her frailty and her beauty and her extremely tenuous hold on her balance in that part in a way that I've never seen anyone play Lady Macbeth.
In 1950, Vivien accepted the role that would stand as one of the high points of her acting career, Blanche in Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire. She would draw on the very best of her talents. Also tested would be her personal courage.
Streetcar, I remember Larry saying, she has worked and worked and worked. And he said once, perhaps I've pushed her too far.
And I think that Streetcar was probably the greatest mistake she made in allowing herself to do the revival on the stage and then the film, because it was all too near home, and I don't think it could have been good for her at all.
Sure you wouldn't like another? Well, maybe I will just take one tiny nip more, just to put the stopper on, so to speak. Now don't get worried. Your sister hasn't turned into a drunkard. She's just all shaken up and hot and dirty and tired.
I had no sense of it being extraordinarily personal,
Waiter.
the character of Blanche.
Waiter.
I would say she was a very determined person and a strong person in many respects. The fact that I was totally unaware of illness during the course of the making of the film says something. That Vivien was one of those extraordinary actresses who could read a script, say, oh yes, in order for this to come to life, this, and this must happen. And absolutely pinpointed down to the last detail in terms of performance in her head, and then get up and do it.
I don't want realism, I want magic.
Magic.
Yes, magic. I try to give that to people. I do misrepresent things. I don't tell truth. I tell what ought to be truth, and if that is sinful, then let me be punished for it. Don't turn the light on. Some things are not forgivable. Deliberate cruelty is not forgivable. It is the one unforgivable thing, in my opinion, and the one thing of which I have never been guilty.
For her performance in A Streetcar Named Desire, Vivien-Leigh won her second Academy Award as Best Actress. It had been a triumph. In Blanche, she exposed aspects of herself she had never shown before on screen or stage. Her fragility, her sudden dips into despair and desolation that in the future would become more and more difficult to overcome. In the years ahead, there was rarely a time Vivien was not working or preparing to work in radio, in films, in theater. The Oliviers toured and traveled together, and most often were under a constant public scrutiny.
Incidentally, he won an Academy Award, and she won an Academy Award for different pictures, of course, but they both accomplished the same result. Was Gone with the Wind a surprise to you?
I'd always wanted to play in Gone with the Wind, but I must say that when I was chosen, I thought I didn't really think it would happen, but I'd wanted it to happen for so long that...
I'd never cast her as a Jezebel, would you?
Thank you very much.
But by the early 50s, it became apparent that their marriage had begun to unravel. Vivien's mood swings were becoming more pronounced and more frequent. And for Olivier, the strain and the sense of helplessness were sometimes unbearable.
He said Vivien had given him some of the most wonderful times of his life, and also some of the worst.
With a manic depressive person, they're either very, very up or utterly down. And very often, in the up times, they feel that they're strongest and that they can do almost anything.
But what was touching was that when she behaved badly in nursing homes, she made scenes and broke windows and attacked people. And she would write letters and go and see them afterwards when she got better and apologize and send flowers and everything she could do to show that she didn't really mean it.
I do know that sometimes she had shock treatment, which she couldn't bear.
But it must have been awful to know that she had this shadow hanging over her.
The belief that she was married to the greatest actor that ever lived, that never left Vivien. Olivier's star continued to rise, but for Vivien, now in her 40s, the roles were becoming more limited. In 1956, they took their production of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus on tour through Eastern Europe. Olivier was a major success as Titus. Vivien's role was comparatively minor, but not so her achievement.
When he and she played Titus Andronicus, she was at her very worst, but in performance, she never failed.
Vivien insisted on remaining with the tour, even though she experienced a number of severe manic attacks. On the return to London, her stability was to be further tested.